trapped in Blackwood Forest, hunted by a cult and a demon. The friend's only chance for survival is to fight back. But how do you defeat something not of this world? Dylan, Zoe, Maya and Lucas thought the forest couldn't get worse. They were wrong. As the demon emerged and the cult closed in, the group faced an impossible choice: run deeper into the cursed woods or confront the horrors head-on. This is the final chapter of The Lamplighters. The creature's roar echoed through the clearing as it turned its glowing red eyes on the group. The friends scattered, ducking behind trees and rocks for cover. The cultists moved closer, their lanterns casting eerie red light through the fog. "We're surrounded," Zoe whispered, gripping a sharp branch she'd found on the ground. "We need a plan," Dylan said, his voice low but steady. He glanced at the creature, which was now pacing around the altar, its claws scraping against the stone. "A plan?" Lucas hissed. "Against that thing? Are you insane?" "We don't have a choice," Maya said. "If we keep running, the forest will just twist us back here. We have to stop it." "Stop it?" Lucas asked, his voice rising. "How?" "The lantern," Dylan said, his eyes locking on the glowing object on the altar. "It started everything. Maybe if we destroy it, we can end this." The group huddled together, speaking in hushed tones as the cultists and the demons searched for them. "Okay, we distract the cultists," Dylan said. "Lucas, you and Maya draw them away. Zoe and I will go for the lantern." "Why do I have to be bait?" Lucas protested. "Because you're fast," Maya snapped, "and we don't have time to argue." Lucas muttered under his breath but nodded. Maya grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the edge of the clearing. Dylan and Zoe waited, their hearts pounding as they watched their friends dart from cover. "Over here, freaks!" Lucas shouted, throwing a rock at one of the cultists. It clattered against the lantern, drawing their attention. The cultists turned as one, their movements unnervingly synchronized, and began pursuing Lucas and Maya into the trees. "Now," Dylan whispered. He and Zoe sprinted toward the altar, their footsteps muffled by the fog. The demon growled, sensing their approach. It whipped around, its skeletal form towering over them. Zoe screamed as it lunged, swiping with claws as long as knives. Dylan shoved her out of the way, narrowly avoiding the attack. "Keep it distracted!" Dylan shouted, scrambling onto the altar. The lantern's glow pulsed, and the air around it shimmered with heat. He reached for it, but an invisible force knocked him back, sending him sprawling to the ground. "It's protected!" Zoe yelled, throwing a rock at the creature. The distraction worked. The demon turned its attention to her, giving Dylan time to recover. "There has to be a way to break it," Dylan muttered, his mind racing. He glanced at the symbols carved into the altar, their shapes twisting and shifting as if alive. "The symbols!" he shouted to Zoe. "They're keeping it alive! Destroy them!" Zoe grabbed a sharp rock and began chipping away at the carvings. The demon let out an ear-splitting screech and lunged at her, but she ducked just in time. The moment Zoe shattered the first symbol, the lantern's glow flickered. The demon howled, its form rippling as if in pain. Dylan climbed back onto the altar, using his own rock to smash at the other symbols. The cultists, sensing the ritual was failing, began to return, their lanterns bobbing in the fog. "Hurry!" Maya screamed, appearing at the edge of the clearing with Lucas. "I'm trying!" Dylan shouted, slamming the rock down with all his strength. The final symbol cracked, and the lantern's glow exploded outward in a blinding flash of red light. The demon let out one last, anguished roar before its form collapsed into smoke, sucked back into the void beneath the altar. The ground shook violently, and the altar crumbled into rubble. The cultists froze, their lanterns extinguished. One by one they turned and walked into the forest, disappearing into the fog. The forest fell silent, the oppressive fog lifting as dawn broke over the horizon. The friends stood in the clearing, battered and exhausted, but alive. "Is it over?" Lucas asked, his voice shaking. "I think so," Dylan said, staring at the pile of rubble where the altar had been. "Whatever that thing was, it's gone." "We should go," Zoe said, her voice barely above a whisper, "before the forest changes its mind." They didn't need to be told twice. Together they made their way back through the forest, the trees no longer shifting to trap them. When they finally emerged onto the main road, the first rays of sunlight warming their faces, they collapsed in relief. None of them spoke as they walked back to town. There were no words for what they'd seen, what they'd survived. But one thing was certain: they would never return to Blackwood Forest. Survived the horror? Hit subscribe for more.